somewhere in rural Pennsylvania. A family is keeping butter, milk, and meat cold right now, and their electric bills plays no part in it. The Amish figured out passive food cooling centuries ago. The method costs about $4 to set up. Most people assume that keeping food cold requires a compressor, a plug, and a monthly utility charge. That assumption is so baked into modern life that almost nobody questions it. But for roughly 200 years before electric refrigerators existed, ordinary families kept food fresh through summer heat. They did not just salt everything or smoke it. They kept things genuinely cold for days and weeks at a stretch. When the power goes out today, most households are in trouble within 4 hours. An Amish household is not even inconvenienced. That gap in resilience is worth understanding. The knowledge did not disappear. It just stopped being taught. The one thing sitting at the center of all of this is a principle called passive cooling. Specifically, it is the way still water, moving air, and the earth itself can hold and transfer cold without any machinery at all. Start with the ground. About 4 feet below the surface, soil temperature stays remarkably stable all year. In most of North America, that figure sits between 50 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. It does not matter much what the air above does. The ground is slow to heat and slow to cool, which makes it a natural buffer. That is the physics behind every root cellar ever built. Dig down far enough, and the earth does the temperature work for you. A traditional Amish root cellar is not complicated. It's a room, partly or fully underground, with thick earthen walls and a low ceiling. The mass of the surrounding soil absorbs heat from inside the space. Warm air that sneaks in gets pulled down into equilibrium with the cool walls. Properly vented, a root cellar will sit close to 50 degrees even in August. This is cold enough to slow bacterial growth dramatically. Milk lasts days longer. Butter holds its shape. Vegetables do not wilt overnight. Now add the second element, which is water. Water stores cold extremely well. A large ceramic crock filled with cold water and set in a root cellar acts as a thermal battery. It absorbs heat slowly, keeping the air around it cooler than it would otherwise be. Amish families use heavy stoneware for this reason. The ceramic itself has thermal mass, and the water inside amplifies that effect. Set your butter crock inside a larger vessel of cold water, and you have just built a primitive but effective cooler. The water has to be replenished, but in a home with a hand-dug well or a nearby spring, that was never a problem. The third element is moving water, which brings us to the springhouse. A springhouse is a small stone or brick building constructed directly over a natural spring. The spring water flows in, runs along stone channels in the floor, and flows out the other side. That water is typically between 48 and 54 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. It never warms up the way a pond does, because it's coming straight out of the ground. Crocks of milk, jars of cream, and wrapped cuts of meat were set directly into those channels. The flowing water pulled heat away from the containers continuously. That is convective cooling, the same principle a car radiator uses, just with cold water instead of hot. So why does flowing water cool better than still water? Still water near a warm container heats up and stays there, forming a warm layer. Flowing water carries that warm layer away and replaces it with fresh cold water constantly. The result is a consistent, sustained chill that standing water cannot match. A well-built springhouse could hold dairy at close to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, colder than many modern refrigerators. Now here is where the $4 part comes in. Not everyone has a spring on their property, but the principle is entirely portable. The Amish also use a simpler, smaller version of this idea, called a zeer pot, or pot-in-pot cooler. It uses 2 clay pots, one smaller than the other, with wet sand packed between them. Water in the sand evaporates through the outer clay wall. Evaporation pulls heat out of whatever is inside the inner pot. This is called evaporative cooling, and it is the same process your skin uses when you sweat. The physics is straightforward. When water turns from liquid to vapor, it needs energy to make that phase change. It pulls that energy from its surroundings as heat. The surface of the outer pot becomes the cooling zone. If the air is dry, evaporation is fast and the cooling effect is strong. In low humidity conditions, the interior of a zeer pot can drop 15 to 20 degrees below air temperature. 2 clay pots and a bag of sand cost about $4 at a garden center. You wet the sand, set it in a shaded spot with airflow, and the physics does the rest. No wiring, no motor, no refrigerant. But how did the Amish make these methods last through a full summer? They combined them. A springhouse kept the bulk storage cold. A root cellar handled vegetables, preserved foods, and overflow. Small clay pot coolers sat in the kitchen or on a shaded porch for daily use. And natural ice, cut from ponds in winter and packed in sawdust, extended everything further. Ice harvesting was serious seasonal work in Amish communities. Teams would cut thick slabs from frozen ponds in January and February. The blocks were hauled to an ice house, stacked tightly and buried in layers of sawdust and straw. Sawdust is an excellent insulator because its air pockets slow heat transfer. Properly packed ice could survive well into September, sometimes October. A single winter harvest supplied a whole farm through the warm months. That ice went into wooden iceboxes, which were the direct predecessors of electric refrigerators. The icebox is just an insulated box with a block of ice at the top. Cold air falls, so the ice at the top cooled everything below it by natural convection. The melt water drained into a pan underneath, which had to be emptied daily. Simple, effective, and requiring nothing more than good insulation and a block of ice. The evidence that this worked is not just historical anecdote. Food science confirms it at every step. Bacterial growth slows sharply below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. At 40 degrees, most spoilage organisms are barely active. At 32 degrees, growth almost stops entirely. The Amish methods consistently hit these ranges in the food contact zones, not just the ambient air. That distinction matters. A room at 55 degrees with cold water channels running through it will keep food in those channels at 42 degrees. The air temperature and the food temperature are not the same thing. Modern food safety researchers have actually studied traditional springhouse cooling. Their findings confirm that properly managed springhouses maintain food at safe temperatures reliably, not approximately, reliably. Off-grid homesteaders today are reviving all of these methods. People are building root cellars under new construction specifically for passive refrigeration. Clay pot coolers are being used across Africa and South Asia, where rural electrification is still incomplete. The zeer pot design won a development prize in the early 2000s for extending produce life in Nigerian markets. Farmers using it saw vegetable shelf life go from 2 days to nearly 3 weeks. That is not a modest improvement. That is the kind of shift that changes whether a family eats or goes hungry. So here's the full picture. The Amish approach to keeping food cold without electricity is not one trick. It is a layered system built on 3 physical principles. Thermal mass from soil and ceramic holds cold and resists temperature swings. Convective flow from moving water continuously removes heat from food surfaces. Evaporative cooling from wet clay and dry air creates a drop below ambient temperature. Each layer covers the other's weaknesses. If the spring runs low, the root cellar still works. If the cellar is too warm for dairy, the springhouse handles it. If you need something cold in the kitchen right now, the clay pot is right there. What makes this feel remarkable today is that we handed all of this off to one machine. We gave the refrigerator every job, plugged it in, and forgot that the underlying physics never changed. The ground is still 52 degrees 4 feet down. Springs still run at 48 degrees year-round. Wet clay still evaporates and cools. None of that required electricity then, and it does not require it now. The $4 pot-in-pot cooler is the sharpest version of that lesson. 2 clay pots, some wet sand, a shaded corner, and passive food cooling that actually delivers. You did not need a compressor, you needed to understand where the coal already was and how to hold it there.